Hey guys, it's Clouds. Thanks for joining me for another week. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you've been enjoying the travel content that we've been putting out so far. And just a reminder, if you have any questions for us at all about travel, please feel free to email us, comment below, or just slide into our DMs, whatever you like. It is a brand new week, and this week I'd like to talk about tours. What is a tour? Are they right for you? What are the different types of tours? And more specifically, if you are coming to Australia or planning to travel here in the future, which I hope you are, what are the areas and destinations within the country where you should consider doing a tour? First, I'd like to start off by addressing some of the preconceived ideas of a tour. Now, I will be the first to admit my idea of a tour was a little bit false when I first decided to go backpacking to Europe as a 19-year-old. I decided I did not need to join a tour. I knew everything myself. I most certainly did not need to be babysat throughout the experience. And my idea of a tour was that of a Kentucky or a top deck style of a tour, because it's so popular for young Australians to do that when they first go abroad, especially to Europe. And so my idea of what every tour would be like was based off their kind of model, and I decided that that wasn't necessarily something I'd be interested in. Of course, since becoming a tour guide myself here at Welcome to Travel in Melbourne, my opinion and experience of tours have changed. As a tour guide and also being a part of other tours, especially here in Australia with other guides, I've realised how diverse they are. They really cater for a range of demographics, offer different experiences, and are suitable for different personality types. So you really need to decide, first of all, what kind of traveller you are and what kind of experience you want to get out of it. Now, the first preconceived idea people have, and which I had at the start, were the group sizes were going to be too big and potentially too overwhelming if you're not really a party person every day or seeking to be bombarded with 50 new friends or even 25 new friends. So the group sizes do vary, and if you are after more of an intimate, relaxed tour, you can absolutely find those, especially here in Australia. Sometimes an issue can be that you feel like you have no free time at all, especially if it's a longer tour that lasts a week or 2 weeks or more, and you have little to no free time. You can really feel like that can become a little bit too much and you're being babysat through the experience, and that might not be something that you're after at all as well. You may find yourself a part of a tour group that is not the right demographic for you or the age group, and you're just not gelling with the people around you, and that is absolutely a valid idea as well. Of course, you need to be open-minded and want to expose yourself to people and personalities and demographics that perhaps you've never been exposed to before, and enrich yourself in a social atmosphere and meet people you would have never met. But you also do, of course, want to do your research and not be stuck as perhaps if you're more of a shy person, you're not really a drinker, you don't want to be out partying all night and you're more of an introvert, then of course you should not be booking onto a tour that's the party tour, if you know what I mean. You may think that the tour sounds a little bit too expensive and question whether it's a good value for money, and again, that is absolutely a valid preconceived idea of a tour. And lastly, an extremely valid point would be that you feel like the tour might only take you to the tourist attractions or just the surface level of the destination, and you're not being taken to see or discover the unique hidden gems of a city that perhaps the locals would have been able to take you to a little bit easier, or you could have found yourself just based on your own research. So all these preconceived notions of a tour are completely valid and are absolutely ideas that I had before I had experienced a range of different tours and became a tour guide. So let's talk about the different types of tours that are on offer and what you need to be researching or questioning when you are looking online to find what's suitable for you. Here in Australia, you are really spoilt for choice in terms of the variety of tours that are on offer. You could opt for a one-day tour, multi-day, ones lasting a couple of weeks up and down the East Coast. You've got ones focusing on specific and unique experiences or revolving around some unreal transport options, such as sailing around tropical islands or taking a four-wheel drive to a remote part of the country. You've also got tours that are multi-layered, such as our 8-day tour here in Melbourne, welcoming you to the country, exploring the unique hidden gems from a local perspective of the city of Melbourne and the surrounding areas, but also giving you the right support and resources to continue on your working holiday adventure throughout the country, such as how to go about work, travel, and living here as well. Now, there is no need to pick one type of tour that you think fits you the most and apply it to every destination that you want to see in the country. Just because a one-day tour might work in one destination doesn't mean that it would be the most beneficial in another destination. So that's absolutely something to consider as well. So when you do start your research, there are some things you need to identify and perhaps some key questions that you need to find the answers to. So feel free to start writing a list, and when you are doing your research, see how many of those things you can actually answer based on the tours that you do find. Number one, this is more for yourself personally. What type of traveler are you? Are you a party person? Are you more introverted? Are you into history? Do you want more of a physical exercise challenge and more of an exploration kind of a tour? Are you a food and drink connoisseur? Do you like nature? Are you a big city person or a quaint small town kind of a vibe? In terms of figuring out what type of traveler you are, and something that I've realized when I've been backpacking is that although I'm a very social person and I absolutely love meeting new people, it can get quite exhausting sometimes. So you don't have to just go for the party tour every step of the way, because you might just feel like you need a more of a relaxing vibe here or there, or that you missed out on an opportunity to learn about history and culture in such an iconic and culturally significant location because you were just out partying the whole time, if you get me. So in terms of figuring out what traveler you are, you don't need to lump yourself into one category and again just apply that kind of social atmosphere for every destination that you do visit. Another thing to identify when you are doing your research is picking a tour that is of value in terms of your own time. So make a list of the must-do destinations for you personally, or the places you're most excited about, and start to research how much time is appropriate to explore those places. There is nothing worse than having something so high up on your list and then perhaps booking a tour or being part of a group that you felt rushed through that destination and you think, oh, I want to go back there again one day because I feel like I wasn't there for long enough. Does that destination on your list have a multitude of layers that you need to explore and spend the time in doing so, or is it more of a photo opportunity and an Instagram stop where you don't need to hover around for too long? Who does this tour attract? What's the age group? What are the demographics? What are the interests that would attract these kind of people the most? Is it a very active tour? Does it require a certain level of fitness? Is it about culture, history? All these things are something that once you identify, you will decide whether that's something that you're actually after or not. Now, lastly, this is extremely relevant for Australia. The sheer size and vastness and remoteness of this country can often become quite overwhelming. And again, this is why a tour is just so fantastic, because you might have destinations on your bucket list that are just extremely remote, or if you were to do them yourself, it requires an absolute level of preparation, experience, and equipment that you just might not have. So tours can often just become the only option depending on where you actually want to see. Now that you've identified what kind of traveler you are and the type of tour you want to be a part of, I'll tell you about the benefits you can expect by joining the tour. Number one is absolutely going to be the value of a tour guide. They will have the knowledge, the passion, the expertise, and also the local perspective of that area that perhaps you wouldn't get otherwise unless you had a friend that lived there who was willing to take the time to show you their local favorite spots. I'm definitely guilty of perhaps being a little overly enthusiastic sometimes about showcasing Melbourne on our tours, as it is my home city, but I definitely feel like that enthusiasm rubs off on our travellers and they're able to see the city from my local perspective and through my own experiences. When learning about Indigenous history throughout your adventures here in Australia, and especially if you're planning to visit a really culturally significant destination on your travels, a guide who has that area of expertise and personal connection perhaps is going to provide you that insight and knowledge that you're just not going to be able to replicate yourself. The second benefit is, of course, the group atmosphere that a tour can provide. You may be meeting friends for life. your future soulmate, or at least people who are incredibly like-minded to you, understand what you're going through, your experiences, your emotions, and potentially who you can travel the rest of Australia with as well. Next is of course the value for money. Once you break down all the inclusions of a tour, you might actually start to realize that you perhaps can't actually do it cheaper yourself. And once you add in also the added bonuses such as the group atmosphere, being able to meet people, and just taking away the stress of not having to organize it yourself, you might start to realize just how high the value actually is. There are destinations here in Australia that are extremely challenging to travel yourself. It's not a question of your ability as a traveler, they're just logistically either hard to get to, so remote, you require a lot of pre-planning and research and also the right equipment. So you're not stuck in a remote part of the country with access to absolutely nothing and no phone signal. There are a few key destinations in Australia where you should avoid a logistical nightmare and book yourself onto a tour to get the most out of seeing these areas, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And it also leads into my point of safety. You do not want to compromise your own safety, especially here in Australia. I'm sure you've heard about the cheeky little spiders and snakes we have just in our toilets, things like that. Obviously there is a stereotype that has been completely blown out of proportion, but I'm not going to stand here and pretend like we don't have some dangerous things. Australia is definitely somewhere where you should just have it in mind, and so by booking yourself onto a tour you can ensure that that is all looked after and you do not have to stress about your own safety. So where in Australia should you consider joining a tour? Well, let's start with Melbourne, my hometown, voted the most livable city 7 years in a row, the home of welcome to travel. It's a city of 5 million people, and it is, I mean, obviously I'm biased, but it is such a beautiful place to experience, and what it's known for is a lot of hidden gem elements. Their laneway culture, the music scene, the events, food and drink culture. If you are coming over on a working holiday visa or just looking to start your Australian adventure off the right way down here in Melbourne, then by booking onto one of our tours, you are going to meet those friends and have that local perspective of Melbourne and the surrounding areas. You will leave this part of the country already starting off having met like-minded people, having the right support and resources that you need to continue your journey, and feeling like you've seen this part of the country to the extent that you wanted to. Now, a must-see adventure while you are down here south in Victoria is the Great Ocean Road and the Grampians National Park. Probably one of the most amazing road trips you can do in the entire country. Nations you want to look into seeing along the Great Ocean Road are Bells Beach, Lorne, Apollo Bay, Lockhart Gorge, of course the 12 Apostles, and as you loop around, the Grampians National Park is absolutely iconic. The scenery is breathtaking, and the wildlife and abundance of wild kangaroos is something that you just must see. Now here you can absolutely do a tour. There are a range of different tour operators that do take you down the Great Ocean Road, and they're all fantastic in what they do. Now if you are limited on time and want everything organised for you for the Great Ocean Road and want to tick off those destinations that I just mentioned and kind of more want to treat it as the iconic stops, take a photo and move on, then by all means a tour is going to be perfect for you. However, it is one of those destinations that if you've got the group of friends ready to go with you and the time, give it about 5 days if you want to see the Grampians as well, then that is highly recommended and in our opinion the best way to go about it. Of course it does require a little bit organisation and planning from your end, but we do specialise in the Great Ocean Road road trips, so by all means please don't hesitate to contact us if you're thinking about doing it in the future, because it is an iconic Australian road trip experience to do. Now I'm assuming at some point you're going to be exploring Sydney, and you definitely should. It is so iconic. You've got the Opera House, of course, Harbour Bridge, Botanic Gardens, the Bondi to Coogee coastal areas, the beaches to explore, similar working holiday introduction tours on offer as well, and of course you're guaranteed to meet people, especially if it is your first stop as you land in the country, but I'm kind of hoping that you go to Melbourne first and then head up Sydney second, because otherwise you're missing out on Melbourne technically, and that would be a disaster for you. In terms of discovering the local perspective, the unique hidden gems, it isn't as difficult to find those iconic places as Melbourne is. It's not as kind of hidden and eclectic as the Melbourne scene. So even if you are new to travel and it's your first big adventure, Sydney is absolutely somewhere where you can tackle it yourself. Now, a day trip that you must do while you're in Sydney, just outside of the city, is the Blue Mountains National Park. It is iconic. You have never seen eucalyptus gum country like this before. That is an area where you will likely benefit a lot from doing a day trip out, because you've got the guide, you'll be taken to the right part of the national park, you won't get lost, you'll learn about it, and you'll also meet friends to go hiking and exploring through the national park with as well, who you can later meet up with in Sydney as you get back to the city. My favourite destination is of course Fraser Island. Fraser is the largest sand island in the world. It stretches over 120 kilometres of really rugged, rough, untouched terrain and has prominent Indigenous history and culture along with it. Given the island's remoteness and how wild it can be, to organise it yourself, it can sometimes end up actually being a little bit more expensive. You are missing out on that group atmosphere, and you absolutely will have to have your wits about you and your common sense. It's not something where you can just rock up to the island and figure out all the logistics later on. So in terms of logistics and safety, already in itself is a big reason why you should do a tour. Four-wheel driving around the largest sand island in the world is so you're not stressing or getting yourself stuck in a relatively sticky situation or coming across some wildlife that you just have no idea about at all. And of course, you need to be learning about the Indigenous culture of the island and respecting the landscape that you are kind of privileged to visit. The Whitsunday Islands, a collection of 74 paradise tropical islands where only 8 are inhabited and the rest are protected by national park. These are amazing experiences, and unless you have your own yacht or sailing boat, you kind of have no choice but to book yourself on a tour. So you'll be sailing around islands with other travelers, and there are so many options to pick from. So this is somewhere where you'll decide what social atmosphere you're after and what group size you want. Most of the tours around the Whitsundays do a similar itinerary and are relatively around the same price. So it is a question of, do you want the 50-person party boat living on a pirate ship for 3 days, or do you want something a little bit low-key? Do you want something with a more mixed demographic? Are you a sailing enthusiast and actually want to be part of the sailing crew while you're there? The Daintree Rainforest in far north Queensland is the oldest living rainforest in the world, and honestly looks like a scene out of Jurassic Park. The area is World Heritage listed, and the landscape is so diverse, from mountain ranges to fast flowing streams and waterfalls, deep gorges and dense rainforest to sandy white beaches. Although it is absolutely stunning and a must-do in Australia, it is incredibly wild terrain, and it has a lot of potentially dangerous wildlife that lives there as well. You can do it yourself, just make sure that you put a lot of research and planning into it before you do head into such a wild environment. Otherwise, by booking yourself onto a tour for this area with an expert guide who has experience and knowledge of the area, you'll explore parts of the rainforest that you might have never been able to find yourself, and that aspect of your own safety is well and truly looked after, so it's just something you don't have to stress about. Now let's head over to the Northern Territory, and if you're after a unique outback iconic Australian landscape experience, then you can't go past Kakadu and Litchfield National Parks outside of the city of Darwin. Destinations that you want to be exploring are the Bewley Rock Holes, Magnetic Termite Mounds, Tolma Falls, Jim Jim and Gunlom Falls, Noolangi with 20,000 plus year old rock art and Indigenous culture. Again, this is an area of Australia that is extremely remote and has a lot to do with the weather and the conditions of the environment. Up north, they have a wet and a dry season, so at some point in the year there are actually areas that you just don't have access to because of flooding. So it's this kind of level of preparation and knowledge that you do have to look into and actually decide whether it's worth doing it yourself or if it's just so much less stress by having a guide and a tour take you there. A lot of the tour operations up in the Northern Territory that can take you to Litchfield and Kakadu National Parks are locals of the area. They have a strong passion and knowledge themselves and just want to show other people how beautiful and stunning these areas can be. These tours up in the Northern Territory into these extremely vast national parks tend to be very high value for money. With everything that they include and the remoteness of the areas that they take you to, it tends to be absolutely worth your investment in a tour. Now moving on to perhaps the most iconic of destinations in Australia is of course the Red Centre, where you've got destinations such as Uluru, Katajuta, Kings Canyon and more. Just getting to the Red Centre can be a challenge in itself, but once you're there it's guaranteed to be one of the most unique experiences of your life. Now because of the remoteness, however, it can be this logistical nightmare if you do decide to tackle it yourself, and you have to promise to put in the preparation and the research beforehand so as not to compromise on your own safety. To put it into perspective, a lot of people like to do a quick Google search and see how far Alice Springs is from Uluru, if they were to base themselves in Alice Springs and do a cheeky little day trip out to Uluru. And then they realise it's a 5-hour drive each way in the middle of nowhere, whereas on the map it looked like it could be 20 minutes. The Red Centre is almost a must-do for a tour. Also, you get that Indigenous knowledge that I was talking about before, which is of utmost importance, because then you really start to understand how special the landscape is and the environment is that you're exploring. This is about the 5th time that I filmed this section because I realised my audio hadn't recorded for a while now, which is good, so cool. And lastly, we'll finish up on the west coast of Australia, often referred to as the best coast. Again, so unique, but also so remote and vast. To put it into perspective, the distance between Perth all the way up to Broome, which is the most common route to take in between those two destinations, it is around 2,100 kilometers if you were to go direct and taking the inland route. So if you were to stop at all the iconic destinations in between and really take your time, explore and experience what it has to offer, then you're looking at taking about 10 to 14 days to do a road trip or a tour. The destinations in between Perth and Broome that you can see are the Sand Dunes, the Pinnacles National Park, Jurien Bay, the Pink Lake Kalbarri National Park, Shark and Coral Bay, Exmouth, Karijini National Park, and the Pilbara region before heading to Broome. So there's a lot going on up the west coast, and you'll find it is a lot less populated and common as a travel route as the east coast, just because logistically, again, it is a lot more challenging than going up the east coast if you are a solo traveler or just backpacking with a friend. You will often find that unless you can fill up a road trip camper van or a 4-wheel drive completely and split the cost between more than 2 people to bring the price of everything down, that a tour might actually be a little bit more affordable in terms of everything that is included and the national park fees that are involved in the destinations, the activities that you have on offer, and just the equipment that you need for road tripping, camping and exploring around quite a remote part of the country again. Do not let its remoteness and its challenge deter you from visiting, and absolutely you can tackle it yourself, and only you know how much effort, research and preparation you're willing to put in your travels. By no means it makes you any less of an avid traveller if you do opt for a tour in an area or a region such as the west coast of Australia. It just takes away that logistical nightmare. You're doing it with like-minded people, and especially the west coast is going to be attracting nature lovers and people seeking something unique. Okay guys, to finish off, I'm sure you're wondering how to start researching the right way and identifying what the right tour is. My number one would just be to go straight to the experts. Ask them the right questions, figure out what's right for you. They will identify things that perhaps you've never even thought of before, and they'll just guide you in the right direction, because often, especially here in Australia, they probably have done the right tours themselves. If not, they know people who have done a similar tour and can provide the feedback from them as well, which will help to make your mind up. Otherwise, you can never go past YouTube videos from people who have had the same experiences that you're looking at, and also read as many blogs online as you can. Once you've established the type of demographic, age group and social atmosphere that you are after, try and find a tour that obviously matches this. And if you're unsure, you're unable to tell what that actually is based on just their website and information that you've found, again, just go straight to the experts, because they are likely to have done the tour, know a lot more about it, or know people who have done it. Once you have found the tour that's right for you, please figure out if you have to book in advance or not. A lot of popular destinations, of course, can fill up really quickly, and especially in high travel season, they might only have a certain capacity and run 1 or 2 times a week and not every day. So it's definitely something that you want to figure out beforehand. Book in to get your spot and make sure that you don't miss out on the tour that you really, really want to do. That is all for another week from me, team. Thanks for tuning in and listen to me blab on for a while there. I hope you found this useful. And again, if you guys have any questions about travels, tours, Australia in general, please don't hesitate to get into contact with us. We absolutely love answering all your questions, and it's why we're here. So we look forward to hearing from you, and we'll see you in the next video.